Hello, everybody, and welcome to our blog post about teacher change and attitudes. So, today we are going to be talking about the ways that change and attitudes are received within the school system and talk about a little bit of our experience with change and the attitudes that come with that in the school settings. So, to start off with, I'd like to introduce Lori to tell us a little bit about her story with change and attitudes in the school.
Yes, so I'm going to take it more of the early childhood education lens instead of the school, because my experience has been supporting teachers' experiences in post-secondary, obtaining early childhood education diplomas, and supporting them in teacher practicums with mainstream early childhood education centers. And those experiences, as their coordinator, have come with many tensions, where the early childhood educators were going into mainstream field placements in Thunder Bay to as teacher learning practice, and were met with some hesitation, some unknowings of questioning why the Indigenous educators weren't as vocal, or they didn't seem as prepared in the full lesson. And so there was some tensions around ways of knowing, ways of doing, and implementation of their curriculum, which always took a lot of away from the Indigenous educators. So this is why it's so important that we share more narratives, more stories about teachers' experiences, so that we can start bridging the gap of social cultural perspectives. There's many diversity in early childhood educators today.
I think that's a really good point with sharing our stories about how those changes are being received, because sometimes teachers, especially here in Canada, we kind of feel a little bit isolated. Like we're on our own little island in our classroom, and when big changes like indigenizing the curriculum and decolonizing work comes up, sometimes from what I've heard colleagues speak to is that they're a bit overwhelmed with those changes, and the scope of it simply seems too wide, where their attitude towards that change becomes a bit more resistant because it's already a very multifaceted job of teaching, right? Mm-hmm. So adding on new layers to it that are very complex and multi-level that they don't necessarily understand everything about, it can be met with not necessarily hostility, but definitely with a bit of resistance, because it's just simply hard to grasp.
Yes, definitely. So part of my goal has been supporting Indigenous educators in raising their voice in their concerns and how to navigate Western curriculum and embed their Indigenous content as they're coming to know it themselves. And also, I have been on the other side supporting mainstream faculty in college system in Ontario in indigenizing the EC diplomas. So, yeah, the change is not easy, but change is now. It's time that we do embrace Indigenous culture within Canada, and there's also an extra blog that I had wrote on a call to action for ECEs, and you can dig a little deeper on what that looks like and how early childhood educators do have to be familiar with what's happening within the landscape of Canada regarding Indigenous children and families, as there's been many recent events.
And I think you got that right on the head there with, this is kind of the time, there was a time where educators could be a bit passive to these changes, but this is really supplemented with a lot of research. There are a lot of innumerable amounts of reasons why this change needs to be occurring with the work of decolonizing and indigenizing that we're speaking to right now. And it's just, it's paramount. It's now, it needs to be worked on. It's not something that we can subside anymore.
More resources are available. Lots of Indigenous scholars are doing some amazing work. Communities are very innovative in meeting the challenge of providing childcare. So yeah, we have a lot to learn and witness and be in community with Indigenous educators. I think that they're going to bring a lot, and I think these experiences, both sides, are valued and important.
Absolutely.
And how do we navigate that?
I think one way that I might suggest we can navigate that is with critical reflexivity. So it's consistently thinking about what your assumptions are, what your prejudice are, what your goals are, what your dreams are, and how you kind of view these different educational changes, and think to yourself, okay, these changes are being implemented and mandated for a reason. How can my own opinion, my own worldview be reflected in that, and how can it kind of meet in the middle? So it's really considering the personal side of it, the academic side of it, and then the structural side of it through the policies that are being produced.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Reflexology. Can you say it again?
Critical reflexology, or reflexivity.
Yes. Yes.
Reflexology is another
Yes.
thing.
I'm sorry.
So perhaps in the comment box down below, if you have an experience or you have a feeling or some sort of story that you would like to tell us about how you've experienced change, whether you've met it with resistance or accepted it or embraced it, we would love to hear from you in the comments back down below. Is there anything else you'd like to hear from the folks?
No, I just encourage you to keep digging deeper and checking in with yourself on, how you're interpreting your learning and your experiences.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.